Okay. Hello and welcome to Eye Openers. Thanks so much for joining us today, Tony.
Thanks for having me.
Sure. So one thing is different about today, and I'm curious to see who is going to notice it first, but I am drinking something different. Now, on Eye Openers, we are usually drinking something highly caffeinated to wake us up in the morning, but this is an afternoon recording of the show. So I am sticking to my rule of no caffeine after noon. Do you have rules like that with your caffeine? Or no, you're
I usually only drink coffee in the morning, so it's not a hard fast rule. I used to drink those energy drinks in the afternoon, and then the
oh no.
naturopath got after me, so I got off of those.
Yes, thank goodness. Thank you for that naturopath, man. Those
Yeah.
energy drinks are something else. But
Mhm.
so cheers to our afternoon show and our water, staying hydrated today. Now, Tony, there is even though we're doing water today, what is your caffeine drink of choice in the morning? There's lots of options people have told us about on this show. So
I
what is
do a 4-shot iced Americano with caramel and cream.
okay? You are not messing around. 4
No,
shots.
yeah, right out the gate. I'm really
Okay.
regimented in the morning. I have the same thing every morning, and yeah.
Do you have like a stack routine? Like, are you wake up, meditate, or do most important task of the day or exercise? What is your routine like?
Usually I get up and I usually have like a Nugo bar, and I have my coffee, and I have some oatmeal, and then I'll hang out maybe a half an hour before I exercise. I have a gym in my estate, and I'll exercise, and then take a shower and get on with the day. And that's my normal like go-to. I have my kids half the time, so when I have the kids, I get them off to school and make them breakfast and stuff. But yeah.
Nice. Okay. Morning routines are so important. Consistency. Anything you can do to create systems where you don't have to use your brain power or will, to make decisions in that area can be saved for bigger decisions in business. So I love hearing when people have those routines. But let's give you like a real proper introduction, shall we? You started out with Cutco. So for those of you who remember, that's the knife company. Maybe it used to be door-to-door selling, right? When you started?
In-home sales by appointment.
In-home
Yeah.
sales. Yeah, by appointment. Great. And you were only a high school student when you started. So super ambitious, driven person, like right out of the gate. And you were a top 20 national rep out of 80,000 people. I mean, that says a lot about your sales skills, which we're going to get into. You ran the big Portland office, one of the top 5 offices out of 400. I mean, just you have accolade after accolade of performance here, and you were a company-wide champion there. So now you're currently overseeing and managing the operations of North America for Cutco Closing Gifts, which sold just under $20 million last year and has 36% growth over 2020, which was also the best year ever. And you have 200 sales reps in that organization alone. So owns Branding Tools, that is the engraving company. Okay, you guys employ 34 people in that organization, and you guys engrave over 85% of those Cutco closing gifts sold in the US. So that's about 3 million in annual revenue. I mean, this is incredible. You live just outside of Portland in Vancouver, Washington, and owns the clothing brand Best Day of My Life. So let's start with that one. How did that clothing brand come to be?
That's actually a funny story. How that came to be is my national trainer, Adam Sobieski, is one of my very best friends. And, we pick up words and sayings from our friends and family. And he called me one day and I was like, "Hey, how's your day?" I'm like, "Best day of my life." He just thought it was fun. And so he just started saying that when people would ask him. And what had happened is the gal he was dating at the time thought it was funny. So she put it on a t-shirt for him and his 2 roommates. And it just said "Best Day of My Life." And they would wear it out and they'd get all these questions on it. And people wanting to know what it was or why is today the best day and whatnot. It became this little conversation starter. And they decided to apply and they were granted the trademark, and they did an Indiegogo crowdfunding, and they sold like $10,000 of product in the first 5 days and launched. And it was out there, and they owned the trademark and the Instagram and Facebook and all of it, but they didn't have anyone running it. It was just kind of sitting there after that. So I was like, well, if you guys ever want to sell it, let me know. And I kind of pushed on it for a couple of years. And 3 years later, they finally said, okay, we're interested. And I bought the company and relaunched it. And then it's more of a passion project than anything else. It's a fun, positive brand, and it sells online in some stores and whatnot. But the idea is it's hard to have a bad day when you set your intentions and you're wearing something that says best day of my life. And it really is a great conversation starter too, in a world where people's faces are stuffed in their phones and no one talks to each other anymore. So that's where best day of my life came to be, as kind of a fun side thing that is now a online mostly company.
Yeah, but I love it. And it's, it speaks about your values, and like you said, a practice that you use to set intention for having the best day ever, best day of your life. I have a client who, her mantra is most blessed girl in the world.
Okay.
And she's got t-shirts and the whole thing. I don't even think she's trademarked it or whatever,
Right.
but it's for the mindset that if she practices that level of gratitude and believes it and speaks it into the world and has conversations about it, she tends to manifest more and more blessed things for herself.
Right.
So it's been a practice that I've had the privilege of watching for years. That's really served her. So I'm with you. It might be a passion project, but I think it's really effective to have this kind of mindset.
Mhm.
So if you and I were to speak 3 years from now, what would you have accomplished that you would want to tell me about? So I call you up out of the blue. Oh, Brittany, it's so great to hear from you. I am so excited to tell you about.
It's a great question. At this point in my career, what's most exciting is watching the human trophies, if you will. It's watching the reps buy their first homes and raise their kids and buy their dream cars and go on vacations and really live exciting lives. I'm sure the company's going to keep growing. That's the way we set it up. I'm sure we'll be doing, we did almost 20 million last year. 3 years from now, my guess is we'll be doing close to 30 million in revenue. But that's here nor there at this point. It's just exciting to watch the people that have been with me for a long time really take it to the next level. And so that's my guess on what we would talk about if you called me out of the blue. And we'd probably talk about my smoosh faced cats and my kids, and the things I'm doing around my estate, because I'm always doing projects around here and fussing with cars and motorcycles and whatnot. But that would be my guess, is where the conversation would lead.
And so how has that become something that's so important to you? That's like you could have told me anything, and you're telling me about, actually, it's the impact you have on your people and the opportunity that it creates for them. How has that become kind of the driver of your leadership and your mission? How did you get there?
I'm ultra pragmatic, and when you make it about the people and the process, the rest seems to work itself out. And ultimately, the organization is the people. Like, you can have the best product in the world, you can have the best process in the world, but if you don't have someone driving that, it doesn't exist. So having a leadership style where you take care of your people and you're looking after your people, but are really trying to help them understand core competencies and helping them take their life to the next level, really is the exciting way to work, because it's enjoyable. It's fun to help people figure out the puzzles that is entrepreneurship, or that is sales process, or that is client relations, or building your gold group, or these type of things. And just watching people, those aha moments, and then it clicked together for them, and watching them grow their business and their profitability, and but most importantly, their lifestyle is most important, because no one wants to be the richest person in the graveyard, right? So you want to live while you're still alive. We were talking on the pre-call that the death rate's unusually high. It's 100%. So that being said, there's no time like the present to actually live and be present, and be focused on growing for the future, but also enjoying today. So helping people do that is really what becomes really exciting. At some point, you accomplish all your goals that you wrote down when you were young, and you have the house and the car and the travel and the flexibility and the time, and it has to be a deeper, bigger mission. to still be involved.
Hmm. Hmm. And so that's what drives you now. This is why you show up. This is why you're still focused on growth, because it provides more opportunity for more people to fulfill their dreams.
We're more focused on process than growth. I think
Okay.
growth is the byproduct of that.
Mm, right. That was my assumption. Sorry.
Mm.
But what a great way to put it, that if you're focused on process, that the growth is a result of getting that right. Very cool. Um, so now I happen to know a little bit that you practice what you preach. When we first spoke on the phone, when I called you up randomly, you were in Hawaii, which is an amazing spot and place to spend your free time. What are the other opportunities that this creates for you, right? So if in this focus in the next 3 years is to build out the process, create opportunities for people to live their life and have these human trophies,
Yeah.
what's the greatest opportunity within that for you or for the organization? Why is this a driver?
I think ultimately that's what's fulfilling. I mean, that's what, when you lay your head down at night and you worked hard and you had a good day and you contributed at a high level, that's what feels good at this point,
Mm.
and helping people figure out that process feels good. It's helping people figure out the wins, right?
Yeah.
And working through the hard parts, because entrepreneurship at its core is figuring out problems and figuring out solutions that you don't see the path to. So, being the founder of Cutco Closing Gifts and just being further down the road than my reps, I can help them a lot of times, or with a small business I'm working with, I can help them see those aha moments. And to me, that's ultra fulfilling. I like that. It feels good to help people, but it also feels good to figure out. I like puzzles. I like figuring out the hows and the whys, and the trial and error. Entrepreneurship. I remember when the president of Cutco came and toured my engraving facility, and he came through there and he's like, we engrave like 1,600 knives a day, and we have 30 some employees. And he came in there, he goes, how did you figure out how to do all of this? And I'm like, we just messed up everything until we got to the place where it worked. And at that point, we continued to refine it, and we continue to refine it. And it's a leadership style of complete ownership as well, meaning it doesn't really matter who makes the mistake in my organization. Ultimately, I'm going to take full ownership for that mistake, because if I don't, it gives away my power. And if I give away my power, then I'm just like, well, they're a bad worker. All right, well, maybe they are, maybe they aren't, but that doesn't help the process or the solution. If I change that conversation in my own mind to, okay, how can I train this person better? What process do I need to engineer to make sure this mistake doesn't happen again? What kind of redundancy do I need to build into our process to make sure this doesn't happen? And when you change the quality of the questions you ask yourself, because your mind's going to give you an answer to whatever you ask it. So if you make sure you're aware of the quality of the questions you're asking yourself, you're more apt to get to a solution and less apt to just be frustrated and blame the people, blame whatever. When really, ultimately, my people are a reflection of me. And if they're sucking, that means I'm sucking. And sometimes it is their fault, but that's still not productive to go down that path. So if you just go down the path of complete ownership, then at the same time, you're more apt to find the solution.
Yeah. Really, really great point. I'm brought into organizations all the time, and I see the finger pointing, and even sometimes at the very, very top. And it's confusing because number one, it's just so not productive, but it really creates a culture of mistrust
Right.
where you don't feel supported, and then you're not going to be as engaged and you're not going to give your best. And then if it's not safe, people are afraid to try new things and innovate and, make better processes. And at the end of the day, that ultimately help the organization. So how did you figure that out? Was there a great mentor you had, or how did you figure out, like, God, as the leader, I've got to take this radical responsibility here?
Yeah, I have a curiosity to me. Like, I want to know answers to questions, and I don't have any fear when it comes to digging into those answers, finding the people that have the answers.
Mhm.
So whether that means ultimately asking questions to people that are further down the path than me, I've always been in mastermind groups, and uh, you Jim Rohn says it best that sometimes the millionaires need to invite a billionaire into the group just to have a different quality of question they can ask. And, so surrounding myself with really smart people in a lot of different fields and areas is ultra helpful, because I may have a question on lean manufacturing and how to process and this. And I have a guy that owns, 40 pet hospitals, and he knows that real well. And, so the networking piece is a big key to that. And then also, I don't take for granted that the way we're doing things now is the best way forever. So it's literally me going and working in different departments, usually a day. I don't work that much. I'll pre-frame with that. Like in the office, 4 or 5 hours a week. I'm just not into all that work stuff. But I lean on my senior staff. I have 9 senior staffers that run the company, right? The engraving part. And I have senior people that are in the sales organization side that we work with. I'm on the phone, I take calls and whatnot. I'm definitely accessible, but physically in there doing hard work 4 or 5 hours a week. And when I'm in there doing that work, I try to spend like a couple hours at each department a quarter, and just spending time in the department doing the process. I see so many blind spots that don't even, it's in such a blind spot for the operator, because they're not thinking, how does this process work? Why are we doing this process? And what's the why behind it? I was taught the process, I'm doing the process. So they are implementing, but as the business grows and morphs and changes and this and that, it's bringing that different brain in there saying, well, why are we doing it like this? This isn't our process. That's something that comes up sometimes. Or this is interesting. What things do you think we can do better to make this more efficient for you? And they say, oh, actually this, that, the other thing. And my biggest pet peeve, gosh, I go into departments and the computers don't work well. And I was like, how long is it? Yeah, the printer takes a while. Why didn't you tell someone? Oh, if something's broken, please tell us. We'll just fix it. It's just these little things, but compounded over the entire company, make a big difference when you can spend that time in each department or with each person a quarter, and just continued refinement of our process, because it's kind of like the holidays, right? Like as scale happens, your problems are amplified, right? So you go to Thanksgiving and everybody kind of gets along, but you add alcohol, politics, and religion, and all of a sudden it's a big cluster, right? And you're like, how did this happen? Well, that was under the surface all along. So all businesses have problems under the surface, even if they're not rearing their heads. And by going in there and engineering that stuff out, it helps, because eventually the truth will come out as you scale. The year we went from 6 to 10 million was absolute hell. I could not hire people fast enough. I could not add equipment fast enough. We were running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We worked every day, holidays, it didn't matter, because we didn't have an option. And the turn time was still 4 weeks. And that was so painful that I said, this can never happen again. So as the business grew, we built it. So like right now, the entire program does 20 million, and we engrave most of everything for the US, and we don't do the Canadian stuff. But we're set up now, like at the size we currently are with equipment and facility, that we can do 30 million. So even if we grow a ton this year, we can still handle it. And we just try to stay ahead of that curve, because so many people stay so close, they don't give themselves buffer, right? That catastrophe is right around the corner when it comes to growth, because growing is fulfilling and exciting, but it's also painful if you're not ready for it.
Oh yeah, I meet so many entrepreneurs on the brink of like a nervous breakdown because they actually finally got it right and their business exploded.
Right.
And they don't know what to do. And now they also want to quit because it's actually too good.
Right.
But again, it calls for a next level of iteration and honing processes. And that's really tough to do when you have a backlog of orders and you're nervous about, customer satisfaction. And yeah. So I think that idea of being that, I guess, well suited beyond what the current revenue, I think people are afraid of that as far as expenses go. And how do you track that? I mean, you're using margin, obviously.
Well, it's calculated risk, right? So you
Yeah.
have to look at your trajectory, you have to be a realist, but at the same time, you have to be prepared, right? So I use the same general concept in a smaller scale in my home. Like I don't ever run out of anything because I run it kind of like a hotel. Like we have backups for everything and backups for that. And if somebody gets to the backup, it's their responsibility to let me know so we can get more coming if it's not already on auto ship. It's not reasonable to run out of things at all. So when it comes to business, it's just looking around the corner, and it becomes easier when you are very profitable and you have, money in the bank, and buying extra equipment's not that big a deal. It's harder when you're smaller, but honestly, when you're smaller, the biggest thing people miss on, in my observation, is they their ego and fear is so tied up in their identity that they can't get beyond the point of letting go of things they need to let go of. And you have these executives or these owners doing work that is entry level work because they're too scared to let it go. And the great equalizer, of course, is time, right? The richest person, the poorest person on the same amount of time in a day. And if your time is all tied up and then the business grows, well, there's nowhere for that to go. And then what you see people that are miserable. They're working 80, 90 hours a week. And I'm all for the grind of building the business, but that is not sustainable indefinitely. And then people get burned out and they make mistakes, and then customer service issues. And you have to build a model that can be scaled, right? So what that takes us to is back to what we talked about originally, which is the humans involved. On my behalf, I have thousands of hours being worked every month. And that's because I'm leveraged heavily through my people. And the only way you're ever going to grow your business to a big level or even a medium level is to duplicate yourself, or at least get a lot of the stuff off your plate so you can focus on income producing activities. And maybe you're the lone salesperson right now in your business. But that doesn't mean you can do all of the operations and paperwork and stuff too. People get so bogged down with the mess of business. I found people are really suited, usually, occasionally you find a unicorn, but usually you find people that are suited really well to sales or really well to running the business. It's rare that you have that being the same person that's good at everything. Mm-hmm. But whatever your strengths are, it's just important to recognize and remember that to take your business to the next level, it's going to take delegation. It's going to take leveraging yourself, and you're going to have to multiply the hours in the day. Otherwise, you're going to cap yourself. But that being said, if that's what you want, that's fine. Like some people are the solopreneurs and they don't want a big thing. And so often, there's a lot that goes along. Like I even tell people, like when you have a really big home, like there's just a lot to deal with by having a big home. Like it's exciting and it's beautiful and whatever, but there's just a lot to deal with, right? So the same thing comes with running a big business or a huge business or a medium business. You have to really decide in the first place, like what your goal is. Where are we trying to end up? Are I trying to get to 100,000 in profit? Am I happy there? Is that my end goal? Is it 200,000? Is it $1 million? Whatever it is, it's not even that relevant, but it's relevant to the person that's going to go down that journey, because so many people get on the path, they don't even know where they're going, and they don't know when they get there, which kills me. And then what you see constantly is, I joke with my national trainer that I'm going to come up with rich person school, because once people become rich, they don't know how to do it. They're really bad at it. And they get to a place where they're working all the time. They have all this money so they can live the life of their dreams, but then they don't live the life of their dreams because they're so habitual, and those habits of grinding and working hard, and that fear got them to the place they are. Now they're there and they don't know how to not be that person anymore that got them there. So it's constant where people will work all the time. They're doing really great, successful, huge numbers, but they're miserable. And that is not the goal. That is not what people are after, ultimately, in my opinion. They want the life where they can travel and spend time with people they care about, and be involved in hobbies, or just relax, or whatever. The life that people are designing, most people are not looking back on their deathbed and saying, gosh, I wish I would have put in more hours in the office. They say, I wish I would have done more stuff with people that are important to me. And that urgency, I think, has to be deep in the entrepreneur to get things figured out and get it to where they want, or at least on that path, so they aren't just working all the time in an exhaustive rate, which I see constantly with small business people.
Right, right. Well, I hope one day to join your rich person school.
Yeah.
Um, but but actually, hopefully not, because what I think you're describing, I happen to know a lot of your future students, is what I'll say. Um, and I think it has to do with purpose.
Yeah.
I think for so long, their purpose has been about getting there,
Mhm.
right? Half the time they haven't determined what the target is. So it's easy to just keep staying on that hamster wheel to keep grinding. But it does give a sense of purpose. And I've seen so many people have big successful careers. They retire and they're so miserable. They
Yeah.
don't know how to transition out of it. They spent so much time solving big problems for other people and not thinking about, well, what do I want?
Right.
Right. And I think it's scary for people to look at sometimes.
Super scary. They don't know what to do with themselves.
It sounds like that was something maybe you started early. Like, were you always a lifestyle person, like a lifestyle entrepreneur, or were you, or over time, did you gradually start introducing that as you found more success, you found a little bit more time freedom? When and how should people start thinking about also building a life, I guess is the question I'm coming to here.
Sure, it's a great question. So um, I was never someone that was that interested in not working a lot of hours, meaning I'm fine working. I like working. That being said, I also like not working. So for me, I've always been someone that likes nice things. Like I've always liked nice cars and nice houses and traveling and riding first class and like all these things. So I knew for me, I wanted to make a lot of income because I wanted those things in my life. And I also didn't ever want the stress of worrying about like taking care of things or like, oh, can my kids go to college if they want to or whatever.
Mhm.
So, you know, uh, so I've always liked those things, and I was surrounded with those things growing up. I went to private school and lived in a nice neighborhood and was upper middle class, and uh, you know. But that being said, I had my daughter when we were super young. I had my daughter when I was just barely 19, and I was doing well. I mean, my senior year of high school, I made like 46,000 bucks selling knives, which when you're 17 and have no bills, you might as well have $1 million, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so I wasn't like worried or concerned. It's so funny because now my kids are that age or older, and I would be like, my mind would, I now understand why people were like freaking out. Like now, then I did not even, was not in my radar. But so back then it was just about grinding and figuring it out. I always knew I would figure it out. I didn't know how, I didn't know what, but I knew that if I keep pushing forward, I looked around, I was like, listen, if other people have figured this out in life, I have a good brain. I can figure it out too. I never went to college, but answers are out there. And I was like, I can just figure it out if I just keep trying and pushing forward. I'm very tenacious and I don't mind work. And sales was such a beautiful thing because it was like, you don't get paid for the time you're trading anymore. It's now you get paid for a result. And the company doesn't care. They'll just pay you as much as they want, just tied to the result. I loved that. Loved that. And I was always the kid that was like, mowing lawns and walking dogs and doing car washes and
Yeah.
whatever. But, you know, my mom was always someone that said, if you want something, just go make some money and buy it. I was like, all right, well, that's fair enough. And that's where I think that young entrepreneurship came from.
Yeah.
But over time it builds, right? So like wealth is cumulative. So, after a while you accomplish these things and then you really start, I think, through experiences and also just from spending time with people that are smarter than you and further down the path and older than you and hearing their regrets and hearing their wins and just being, just saying, do I want that for me? Is that the life I want? And if it is, great. And a lot of people are fine with that. But for me, I was like, I want complete control over my time because if I have control over my time, that's really what wealth is. Money plays into it, and money's really important when you don't have enough. But when you have an abundance, it's not nearly as important. But time is always important. And being able to do what you want with your time and being able to have that flexibility to me was really important. So I was digging in with people that were experts in that and reading books and watching people that were great at that and saying, all right, well, how do they do that? Okay, they have a great team, they have great people, they prioritize it. You know, I remember Matthew Kelly, the author, came to one of our events, and I picked up a nugget from him. He's like, just always have your next vacation planned. 60% of the enjoyment of the vacation is in the anticipation of it. Even if you cancel at the last minute, you've enjoyed 60% of it without ever going on it. So
I love that.
I've always tried to have something planned, something to look forward to. But then I think that, yeah, so I think for me, it was, and then what, it's so funny because as you progress as a business person and get down that road and you look back, it's almost like you're almost devastated for your former self for what you put yourself through. You're like, I can't believe that I ever worked 90 hours a week. I'm grateful I did, because when you go from 90 to 40, it doesn't even feel like you're working because it's all perspective. But that being said, I'm glad I'm not doing it now. Same thing when I sold residential Cutco. I did it for years, loved it, had no problem with it. You know, and then after you're done with that and you get into, like, I created Cutco Closing Gifts because I needed a better mousetrap. I never intended to have a national program. I never intended to be an engraver. I just wanted a better way to sell Cutco, because when you sell Cutco, nobody ever needs it again, really. Like, they buy a gift or two, but their set they have forever. It breaks, we give you a new one, or sharpen it, or whatever. You know, with the gifts, people buy them, they run out, then they buy more. It was just a better mousetrap. So watching that come together was really, I was just more curious on how can I sell more without working more, because I was always finding new customers and there was only so much time in a day, and that's not really scalable. So, like, how do I engineer a process that can be scaled? And that's where that came from. And then when my sales, top reps in the company back then were selling around 200,000 a year. So, like, my first full year of doing that, I sold like 80,000, and then I sold some residential Cutco in home still. And the next year I sold around 200,000. Still, no one really took notice because I was a top rep then and now. And then the next year I sold like 300,000, and number two is still around 200. And then all of a sudden everybody's like, "What are you doing? How are you selling 50% more than number two?" And I'm like, my clients reorder, no one else's do. It's just a better mousetrap. And that's when I won the national championship that year. And then the next year again. And then I decided, like, I had so many people calling, asking my secrets. I was like, well, I'm going to put together like a little Tony Robbins kit, and I'm going to sell this $400 a piece. So I promoted it, and I had hair then, I had a green polo on, a picture with me holding the kit and the whole bit. And I had all these pre-orders. I was about ready to ship all these kits. And Cutco got a hold of me and said, "We really like what you're doing, but please don't ship the kits. Let's get together and see if we can partner." They flew out the head of marketing. We spent a couple days, and then I flew out to headquarters in upstate New York. It's an American-made cutlery company. So we spent a couple days, start with a real light partnership, and that has blossomed and grown over time. And then engraving, same thing. Like, they said, you know, we're going to change the commission. We're a union shop. It's not profitable for us, and whatnot. I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to take a pay cut, so I'll start my own engraving. So my stepdad retired, started engraving just my stuff in his garage. And then when other reps started coming along, they're like, well, we want an engraver as well. And I was like, all right, well, there's no money in engraving, so I guess we'll help. And it got to 4 engraving machines and 9 employees in his garage. And my stepdad's like, I did not sign up for this. Get me out. So I bought him out. We moved into our first space at headquarters, and that has grown over the years. Now we're 12,000 square foot in the same facility. And he still works for me, works in fulfillment part-time. He's half retired and whatnot. But all of these things came out of an awareness of my situation, also seeing a need and being ready to capitalize on that need when it presented itself. And then just always refining and always trying to find a better way, but at the same time, keeping the people first, keeping the customers first, keeping the reps first, keeping the executives at Cutco first, and continuing to push forward and grow. And that's where that all came from. I just liked the puzzle of it and figuring it out. Plus, it's such a bizarre job. Like, selling engraved butter spreaders to realtors is that's something that's odd, right? That's not a normal thing. So it's kind of fun because when you're working with realtors and loan officers, and we work with tens of thousands of them now across North America, it's just a better fit for what they do. It's long-term branding, has their info on it engraved, and they can write it off on their taxes, and they have them on hand. It's just better than a basket or gift card that's gone in a week. So working with that industry has been so fun because they're all salespeople too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can connect with them. That's cool. Well, I have a bunch of people in mind that I'd be happy to connect you with in that, that are in that industry. So I'm loving this story. I love hearing about how it unfolds. It's beautiful. But like you said, the key things is you were always aware, even if you were not maybe in the sales mode or the growth mode or whatever, you were always just had this keen awareness of maybe checking in with your customers, seeing what the need was, here's a market for this, here's a niche, and being ready, like you said, to take action and capitalize on it. That was really key. Can you tell us about a story where this didn't go very well or this all went wrong? Because there's all these beautiful stories of entrepreneurship, and you have one of them. But I think it's so important to also tell a story about the dark sides of it when things aren't going well, because so many people are stuck in that. That's where so many people fall off. And I think it's important to share that even the most successful entrepreneurs also have gone through these episodes.
It's funny because when I think back to my story, been with Cutco for 24 years now, the most frustrating moments I've ever had, without question, were always the biggest precursors to the biggest breakthroughs I've ever had. So it's funny because at this point, when something's really challenging, it's almost like there's part of me, like the part of me that pushes on a bruise that just says, something big is about to happen in a good way, right?
Yeah.
Like when COVID hit, that was devastating for us because all of my reps work in the field, live, one-on-one with agents. And all of a sudden, all the team meetings and all of the sales strat, everything is canceled, everything. All of my reps now do not have a job all of a sudden because we go out and we sponsor things and speak at them and tell people what we do. And our normal sales trajectory and growth fell off a cliff. And we're like, okay, well, I got 30 some employees that intend on paying their rent and eating, and we don't really have anything for them to do. And Cutco's closed because of state of New York mandate. So they can't make any knives. I don't have any knives to really engrave and ship. And what are we going to do? It's a very stressful moment, and a surprising one at that, right? No one knew that was coming around. So for us, that was a really hard month. But I was like, okay, we have two options. We can be upset about this, or we can really dig into what's the core issue right now. All right, the core issue is we can't get in front of people. All right, well, how are other companies getting in front of people? Well, everybody's on Zoom. I'm like, what the hell is Zoom? I've never been on a Zoom before. Like I had been, but I didn't know what it was. I'm not very tech savvy. I'm not into any of that. Or it's like a FaceTime call, but everybody gets on it. And they're like, this is how realtors are going to do their meetings now. I'm like, we have a tangible product people hold and feel. And it's visceral. I don't know if that's going to work. And they're like, well, it's our only option right now. It's like, okay, well, let's give it a try. So I got my very top reps together, my smartest minds, and said, okay, we have to figure this out. No question about it. What are we going to do? Mastermind, worked with the national trainer, worked with the top reps, figured it out. That was the best thing that could have ever happened to us. Because once they figured out working virtually, now their reach has been expanded, right? Now they don't just have to, maybe they before wouldn't go 2 hours to do a 5-person meeting, but now they'll jump on a Zoom and do it. So they mastered how to sell virtually. And that process was so painful because we teach people exactly follow the recipe. You will get the proper Toll House cookies at the end. Don't do it your own way. You can infuse your personality, but follow the recipe. And then all of a sudden it all got shook up and the recipe got changed. But ultimately, that's the reason 2020 was our biggest year ever. We grew, and then 2021, we grew 36% over that. And of course, it helps that people are cooking at home more than ever, and realtors don't want to go shopping for gifts. And now my reps now you have the top agents going to meetings that would never attend before because they were too busy. So now I'd say we're probably 60-70% virtual now that there's some live meetings back. We still like to be live and out there when we can, but it's different everywhere in the country. So that was a really challenging process. And you see a lot of companies out there did not make it through that process. Some did, some didn't. When Cutco, very back in the beginning, when I don't want to say I was forced to get into engraving, but I took it upon myself to force myself into engraving. That was really challenging and frustrating, because I thought no one's going to want to sell this way. No one's going to want to sell this way at a reduced commission when they can go do home and garden shows or residential sales. It's still a better mousetrap, but it's a reduced commission. So getting into the engraving process was really challenging. I have no background in manufacturing, and now I'm going to be a knife engraver. It's just absolutely crazy. And then, then we became, I mean, I don't know what the stats are. I think we're the biggest engraving company in the country. I don't think there's a lot of engraving companies doing 1,600 units a day.
Wow.
And we do predominantly Cutco products, and, dialing that in. There was also a point where we used to do a type of engraving was mechanical engraving, where like a tip would come down and scratch the knife, and it took approximately 7 to 9 minutes per engraving. And each engraver would run 3 machines, and we'd run 2 shifts a day. And we had 15 machines, and they were mechanical and costly and slow. And I went back and met with the newer CEO of Cutco. It's a family-owned business, so Jim Stitt Jr. And I went back there and I met with him, and I was like, listen, I have some things I need some help with. And he's very engineer driven. He's a really good CEO. And he's like, okay, well, let's see what we can do. And he said, all right, let's do all of them. I was like, awesome. And when I was there on that trip, I went and talked to Cutco. Is the only other company that's authorized to engrave. Is Branding Tools, my company, in Cutco. But I went down and they showed me this new technology called fiber laser. And they found a way to fiber laser Cutco knives. And before, we could never laser knives because it would mess up the tempering in the steel and they would rust over time. And when your product's guaranteed forever, you can't do that. Yep. So they figured out a way to fiber laser the knives. So I came back, got a hold of the company that makes our engraving equipment, bought one of their fiber lasers, started messing with it, got it tested through Cutco, got it approved. And that was an ultimate game changer for us. Now, instead of having a tip that comes down and scratch, it's a laser. So there's no engraving tips to deal with. There's no moving parts, so nothing breaks. But most excitingly, the piece that would before take 9 minutes to engrave now takes 10 seconds to engrave.
Oh my gosh.
So the company's twice the size, and we run 1 shift a day on 4 machines, and we have a 5th machine for bulk orders and big ones. So if we would not have found that hack, we would have 30 machines right now running 2 shifts a day, and instead we have 4 machines running 1 shift a day. So that type of thing. So it was that awareness that we talked about earlier that really makes a big difference with that, because it would have been very easy for someone to just say, oh, that's cool, and but for me, I was like, I need that immediately. That is a absolute process game changer for our entire company. And Cutco's been such an amazing partner in this entire journey. They're a big company. They have hundreds of employees, not hundreds of departments, but hundreds of employees in many different departments. So even like the fixtures that the knives sit in the engraving machine, their 3D print department was able to produce and make those for our machine. So partner with us in that. And they've just been a great partner all along, which has been wonderful. When you have great business partners, it makes things so much easier in terms of the roadblocks and pushing through and making things happen. And I'm very lucky in that regard.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, again, it's the way you talk about it. I love how passionate you are, even at the other end of it. Like, you even know how the story ends to date, and it's still like a remarkable story. I love your enthusiasm there. What would you say, to summarize all of this? What is the number one behavior that got you to where you are today, but might hold you back from where you're going?
Quality habits. For me, that's everything. And then the idea where you're focused on being ultra pragmatic and putting the feelings aside. The ego gets in the way so often, and putting that aside. But when you we basically live and die by our habits. I mean, people constantly ask me, well, how do you stay motivated? I'm like, I don't even think I am motivated. Like, that doesn't even occur to me. Like, I don't get up in the morning. I don't have to hype myself up to brush my teeth. I just get up and brush my teeth because it's what I do in the morning. Like, but that's the same thing that happens with business and success, right? So, you know, it's almost like nobody gets overweight in a day and nobody loses all their weight in a day. That's accumulation of habits, right?
Right.
Our health is. So same thing in business. So if you have the habit of getting good at solving problems, and that's what you do, you're looking for problems to solve and you're good at solving them and bringing people in to solve them, chances are that's a skill that you're going to develop and it's going to come second nature to you, right? The same thing happens with normal routines, like we talked about earlier. Like, what, yeah, I know what I'm going to do tomorrow morning and the next morning. But I think it's also important to not hold yourself so strict to it that you don't enjoy the randomness and romance of life, right? You don't want to get in your own way at the same time. So having that battle of certainty and uncertainty, which we all deal with all the time, is kind of what makes life fun. I don't want to do the same thing every day. I like that tomorrow we'll have a new set of challenges for me that don't even exist yet. That's fun to me. I always tell people, they're like, oh, I'm sorry you had to deal with that angry customer. I'm like, listen, if a customer gets all the way to me, they're upset. Like, I don't take the call. Like, they would never get to me if they weren't upset. So I remember talking to Stu Smith, who's one of the great architects of Cutco Corporation. He's retired now. And he goes, nobody even gets to my desk unless they're irate. They aren't even able to get to me, right? But I think when you are aware of your habits and you're actively trying to get in like people talk about exercise and enjoying exercise. I exercise every day. I've never liked exercise once in my life. I don't even understand the idea of like, oh, this is fun. A lot of people do. They love it. And I think that's great for them. I hate it. I hate everything about it. But I still do it. And it's not hard for me to do it because I know ultimately that that's good for me. And if I exercise, I'm nicer to people and I have more buffer and I feel better and I sleep better and life is better if you're healthy. So same thing, like 10 years ago, I listened to Living Health program by Tony Robbins. And I was always a big meat eater. And I was like, all right, well, I'll try eating plant-based. And I did, and I had way more energy. And for me, energy was way more important than meat. So I've been plant-based for like 10 years. Not that I don't like meat or whatever, that wasn't it. So energy to me is a very important commodity. So for me, people are like, oh, don't you miss it? I'm like, yeah, I guess. But I also don't miss I enjoy having more energy. For me, that's the bigger win, right?
Right.
And
Understanding that bigger goal behind whatever's in front of you. And that's, a lot of people can't get past that. And that's why they never start exercising or they never consider
right.
changing their diet because they're scared about what they might lose instead of all the things they might gain.
Absolutely. And I also think it's really important to have a habit of getting advice from people that are better at what you want to get better at. It's fascinating to me that people take advice from people that are not good at the thing they're getting advice on. It doesn't, I'm too pragmatic. My mind can't even process the idea. But you see it constantly, like, oh, well, my mom said this, or oh, my girlfriend said this, or I was like, are they good at that though? Like, if that's their thing, that's great. I think that's wonderful. But if that's not their thing, should you be taking tax advice from them? Like, I don't know. Maybe you should get tax advice from an accountant because they're your expert, they're your professional, not your 19-year-old significant other who read something on the internet. Just an idea. So, the habit of getting good advice and surrounding yourself with better people, the habit of health, the habit of sleep, the habit of quality and quantity of great relationships, because that ultimately is what's going to equate to happiness. And being aware, right? So many people live lives and they're so unaware of what's going on that they don't even know what they don't know. And I think those things ultimately are what is going to get people where they want to go, is developing the habits that people will get there. Look at people that already have the life that you want and ask them what habits they have that got them there. And that's a great life hack. It's a great shortcut, finding those mentors. And that's what books are. That's what articles are. That's what smarter people are. Those are life hacks. You're never going to figure it all out on your own.
Right. Gosh, such great points. I mean, we could have done a whole episode on the closing question alone. You have clearly done this before. You know the best little talking points and nuggets there. I can't thank you enough. I know that people are going to get so much value out of this episode. I'm going to definitely share all the feedback with you because it's fun to understand the impact that you're having on new communities. We're going to get the links to your organizations in there. How else could people find you if they wanted to talk with you?
Sure, I'm easy to find. My website's brandingtoolsinc.com, which is the engraving website. My email's my name at yahoo.com, TonyCarlston at yahoo.com, and I'm super accessible. So if you're someone out there listening, don't be afraid to reach out. I'm happy to help anytime I can. At this point in life, that's what I like doing best. I like helping young entrepreneurs find life hacks and send people to people like yourself that are coaches, that this is what you do all day, every day, and are an expert at. I think finding the experts is so important. So if you're listening to this, props to you for taking time for your personal development and business development, because in a distracted world, it's easy to not seek out things of actual content and quality. It's easy to fill your day with noise. And this type of thing, this type of podcast is where you're going to pick up the nuggets that you can actually take and implement. And the biggest key to success is implementation of knowledge. There's a lot of really poor people that are really smart. And if you really want to get ahead financially and in business, you have to be able to be someone that can take an idea and actually implement it and put it in practice, because when you can do that, you're unstoppable in whatever your trade is. It doesn't even matter what it is.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Tony, for being here. And you guys heard it here. Reach out to him if you have any questions. Tons of eye-opening moments today. We're going to make sure we outline all of them in a summary in the show notes to help you remember all of those eye-openers that he shared with us today. So thanks again, Tony. And until next time, guys, see you soon. Okay. Stop the recording here.